Thank you. Allah Ta'ala wabarakatuh, and very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be here among you, the distinguished panel and also participant of the event today. On behalf of Labuan IBFC and also Azmi Associate, we welcome you to this event and hope that we would be worthy of the time that you are willing to commit to us this morning. First, warmest greeting from my CEO, Cik Saiful Bahari Baharum. Actually was taken ill yesterday, and this morning we got a word that he has not recovered enough to be with you today. But I'm glad that I could be here today, and I hope that you find that the session will be very meaningful and useful to you. As I was walking in, I saw a few familiar faces that represent the upper echelon of Labuan business entity. So I'm to the extent I'm quite worried that whether I'm presenting the right facts. So I have better double check my fact before I present. Otherwise, there will be people waiting for me outside the door. Okay, I wouldn't. Let's just go straight to the point. Okay, I think the offshore financial center or international business financial center has gone through tremendous changes over the last 20 years. I think the challenges are attributed to the money laundering activity by drug cartel or criminal elements. Then you talk about terrorism, and then you talk about the financial crisis that have actually hit globally. I think that has forced the landscape of the offshore center and financial center into something that we have today, which I think Labuan IBFC is probably deemed it to be as a mid-shore center. So I think most lawyers are students of history, because I think by learning law you have to read precedent, and so you are inclined to like history. So I view myself as a storyteller of anything else, just to tell you stories about the things that has happened in the offshore center. And if you look at, I would like to start by I think this is a legend. It has not been verified by anybody about the legend of how offshore center or duty-free center actually started. I think back in the 1870s, I think back in the old days, the monarch would tax everybody. So everybody tax. So if you're smaller than me, I tax you. No, if I don't like you, I tax you more, and if I like you, I tax you less. So happened as a group of ship. I think it was 10 ships that was sailing through the Cayman Islands. I think they ran aground. I think the site where they ran aground is still there today. It's called the Rack of 10 Sails, and apparently some of the passenger of the ships were actually members of the royal family. So when the Cayman Islander actually rescued some of these people from this shipwreck, the king was so in debt for rescuing his relative. I bet it's probably related to the queen, because otherwise the king wouldn't be that worried. So I guess, so when it was I think it was a legend. I can't verify it, but it was said that the king actually decreed that nobody shall collect tax from these people between Cayman Island. I guess that's a start where duty-free concept of offshore islands started, because when there's no tax, I think everything trade becomes very cheap. Very attractive for people to trade. So it developed the concept, and then as time goes by, I presume that's how offshore center or duty-free center started. So that is a legend. So I can't really justify it. So if you look at the I'm sure you are aware where there are numerous financial center or offshore center around the world. When I started out in 1999 with Labuan Financial Services Authority, back in the old days, we were known as lobster, but sometimes people always mistake us for lobster. All right. So back in the old days, I think there were more than 70 financial center. But now, if you look at it, I think they had been scaled down, because some of the smaller one couldn't survive the change that was required in terms of the added regulatory requirement. Because back in the old days, offshore centers were known as to be, sort of a black hole for financial transaction, where when you go there, you can't have information there. You can have numbered accounts, you can hide things there. In some places, you can actually buy citizenship there, all those things, and things that will make it very difficult for people to trace who is there, how much money they have, where did the money come from, and everything. So I think that has changed a lot. Labuan was declared as an international offshore financial center in October of 1990, and we rebranded ourselves in 2008, where now we call it Labuan International Business and Financial Center. That was also relating to the pressure that all offshore center had because of the close association of the word offshore with certain negative activity like criminal elements, fraud, and as such. So if you look at the location of Labuan itself, it is very, very strategically located in Southeast Asia. I guess that's one of the reasons why the government back in 1990 decided to actually use Labuan as Malaysia's own international business and financial center. So some of you have never been there, so I just took the liberty of actually, yes. So, sorry. Okay. This is the island of Labuan, also known previously known as the island of Victoria, if I'm not mistaken. We are on the west coast of Borneo, Sabah, Sarawak. Labuan is here, just I think opposite of Brunei, and this is Sabah, and this is Sarawak. So I think lately there was a lot of people asking, is Labuan a safe place because of the intrusion and everything? I think all those the intrusion actually happened on the east coast of Sabah, because I think to cross the international water to Philippines is about maybe 20 minutes by speedboat. And the fact that these people were born and have lived in the waters for last few centuries, they are expert of all the shortcuts that the former enforcement authority have difficulty trying to stop. And yeah, if you have a bigger boat, doesn't mean you can go faster, especially on shallow water. So that's why I think they are beefing up the security on this side, so that they'll be they'll try to stop all the intrusion. So Labuan is it has a very colorful history as a part of the Brunei Sultanate, as crown colonies, state settlement, and British rule, and it was even under Japanese occupation during the Second World War before it became federal territory in 1984, and thereafter being then was declared as international center in business financial center in 1990. So it's a nice, beautiful place, because I know there are few people from Labuan here. If I don't say that, they might take offense. So it's a nice place to visit. You don't suffer the stress that you have in KL. In fact, this is coming to my first year that I spent in KL after about 13 years in Labuan. So I love Labuan very much in that sense. This is just this is the Labuan Financial Park Complex, which is represent the main hub for the financial activity in Labuan. Okay, coming back, I already stated that Labuan was established in 1st October 1990, basically to complement KL as the regional financial center and develop the economy in Labuan and its vicinity. It is regulated by Labuan Financial Services Authority, now known as Labuan FSA, formerly known as Labuan Offshore Financial Services Authority. We rebranded ourselves in 2008 because to get rid of the word offshore. So, but after so many years, people still refer to us as LOFSA, and then sometimes I don't have the heart to actually correct them and say, because they spoke so. No. Okay. Initially, back when Labuan was established in 1990, it was regulated by 3 separate agencies, namely Bank Negara Malaysia Labuan Branch. Then you have the Company Commission Malaysia Labuan Branch, and the Securities Commission, which have Labuan office. I think the first few years of operation, the progress has been very slow. So it came, I guess, to a certain extent, a surprise to the authority at this time why it has not pick up as compared. So I think one of the issue that was raised by the player, it was the issue of confidentiality. I think because you need to distance yourself from the domestic authority, because domestic authority, sometimes people go offshore to hide their wealth. So having the domestic authority supervise the offshore center doesn't really give them a lot of confidence in yourself. So after a lot of process, I think the government decided to establish a new entity, which is Labuan Financial Services Authority, which was established by Act of Parliament in 1996, which bring together all the three functions, and Labuan FSA was born in 1996. And we were renamed Labuan FSA in 2008. Basically, we do all the incorporations of the Labuan company, and we license, supervise bank and insurance related company, and also capital market industry. The establishment structure, we are under Ministry of Finance. People make the mistake of assuming that we are a branch of Bank Negara. No, we are a separate entity under Ministry of Finance. But because we have a glamorous chairman, which is Dr. Zeti, so people assume that we are part of Bank Negara structure. We do have close tie with Bank Negara, but we are not under Bank Negara. We were established by Labuan Financial Services Activity Act 1996, and as part of the restructuring in 2008, Labuan IBFC Incorporated Sdn Bhd was established in 2008. This idea actually goes back to 2001 when the IMF came and did the assessment of Labuan as an offshore financial center. So they said you cannot regulate and promote at the same time. You need to segregate the function, but at that point in time we don't have the money to actually do it. So in 2006, we were given first time that we were given a grant under the federal budget to do some changes to the Labuan, landscape of Labuan IBFC, and then we actually set up Labuan IBFC Inc. in 2006. Initially, when we started out in 1990, there were a host of legislation that was created. In total, we have about 8. But Labuan underwent a comprehensive legal review of its legal framework in not actually in 2010. 2010 is the culmination of the work that was done, but actually it started way back in 2005. I'm pleased to say that at that time I was the project manager for this project. The last time my hair was all black, but by the time I finish it, I have a streak of white already. But I always tell them it's style, but people tend to believe it. So when we did the changes in 2010, sorry, we actually came up with 4 new acts, and we enhanced the existing 4. The 4 acts that was introduced was not actually new subject matter. It was basically the same provision that we had, more or less the same provision, the updated version. But we actually tried to make it easier for the investor by trying to come up with an omnibus legislation, which is one, rather than have 3 separate acts to regulate banking, insurance, and trust, and etc. We try to put it under one act so that we can make it more consistent. We can make it easier for reference, so that you can straight away zoom in the particular interest that you want. So we came up with the Labuan Financial Services and Securities Act in 2010, which basically which regulate banking, insurance, and all the business entity in Labuan. And we also mirror that into a Labuan Islamic Financial Services Securities Act to facilitate Islamic finance. It was a big debate at that time whether we have to have a separate act on Islamic or we can use all that, because all this while we've been using one act that caters for both. But there were 2 different schools of thought. So finally we decided, okay, to satisfy everybody, we have 2 separate. One is the conventional one is the for the Islamic one. We also introduced the Labuan Foundations Act, which is a very interesting development in the sense that Labuan is part of Malaysia. We are part of the common law system, but foundation is a creature of civil law, which is more recognized in United States, France. But because I think that we see the potential of foundation being used in the I think financial landscape, we also decided to introduce the Labuan Financial Act in 2010. And for the Limited Partnership and Limited Liability Partnership Act, it's actually we had a Limited Partnership Act. We just add the second limb of it with the Limited Liability Partnership. And for the acts that we enhanced, we did upgraded the Labuan Business Activity Tax Act, our own act, which is the Financial Services Authority Act, Labuan Trust Act, and also Labuan Companies Act. Okay. This is a view of the financial park complex that I saw we saw earlier, and this is last time it was the waterfront financial hotel, now known as Billion Pavilion. You can see a row of sports car and expensive car owned by the owner right in front of you. And this is the former Sheraton, now called the Grand Dorset. Actually, around here there's a new shopping center called Labuan Times Square. I'm not sure whether it's been fully opened. Is it? Yeah. So Labuan has undergone a lot of changes as well over the last 20 years. So Labuan offered, I think, the full spectrum of product that you would want from an offshore center. We have just from the basic product to the specialized product that you have. You have the Labuan companies that You can use for holding company, trading company, banking, insurance, and the protected sale company. We have the specialized entity for specialized products, and we also have the Labuan Asset and Protection Wealth Management, which I think will be the main subject matter for the presentation today. In terms of the regulatory landscape, we have three types. We have the fully regulated industry, we have the lightly regulated, and we have the non-regulated industry. So this one, I think depending on the license or the business that you want to be, also that will also translate into what are the expectation of requirement or compliance that you are required under the framework. Okay, this is a snapshot of from that I actually took from the annual report of Labuan IBFC for 2013. See, as at July of this year, we have 11,058 companies. We have a total of 58 banks. This one is not available for now. We have about 204 insurance-related company, 339 leasing company, total asset of almost 42.2 billion, and we have 115 foundation, which cover both conventional and Islamic. I think that represent a glimpse of the progress that Labuan has made over the years, and it is interesting if you look at the history of Labuan itself since its beginning in 1990. It has never stopped growing, but of course the growth sometimes is very small. But then for us, we take pride to say that even throughout all the financial crisis that the world has seen since 1990, Labuan has continued to make progress in that sense. We continue to inch along and then grow, I think, as an international business financial center. One important thing that sometimes people don't really know about Labuan is when we started out, we aim to be different from the Caribbeans, the offshore centers in the Caribbeans. So you talk about shell company, last time people talk about shell company, about ease of registration, no requirement, reporting requirement. Labuan was never intended to be that. The task force actually went to the Caribbeans. I was not in task force, it was way before my time. So they went to the Caribbeans, they went to Europe, they went to most of the preferred international offshore center at that time, and then they came up with a design that they wanted to have not short-term companies, but more companies that have legal and physical presence in Labuan and are more interested to stay for the medium long-term duration. That being said, the laws of Labuan were designed to actually bring the company and attach them to Labuan, and also try to shield Labuan from certain I think perception of negative perception by disallowing cash transaction. Labuan is the only, from what I know, is the only financial center that actually prohibit you from using cash. You can't bring suitcase of money or plane load of money and bank it in Labuan. It is illegal for the banks to actually accept that. You cannot accept. They can only accept banking transfer. Back in early 2000, there were a lot of attempts. I don't know whether it's agent provocateurs from international agency that were coming down to Labuan trying to entice some of the players to accept, oh, I got a plane load of money sitting in a runway in Philippines, can I fly it down here? I got a yacht full of cash, can I send my people here to send the money? We always tell them no, and luckily all the players said no. So that's why in 2001, when IMF came to do assessment, and then when World Bank came to do assessment, they were quite impressed. In fact, the sad thing is they didn't realize that Labuan has that provision, so that when they started to crack down on money laundering activity, and we told them we have this provision that Labuan will never be a point of entry for money laundering activity, and they were very impressed in that sense. Because if you look at the requirement for, let's say, know your customer, KYC, it was introduced by the Financial Action Task Force in 1990, if I'm not mistaken, in April of 1990, if I'm not mistaken, the first 40 recommendation. Labuan has already put that in the legal framework, in the laws itself. When it was issued as a directive to other center, we already have it in law, because our laws came into being in October. So it's not something that you just rubber stamp it. It had gone through the process, and when the terrorism issue came after September 11, I think we also were in a good position to take. The thing is, when you have a very so-called not to say over-regulated, but you have very tight, nice and tidy regulation. People tend to shy away from you at that point in time. That's why in the first part of our Labuan existence, we were very slow because people said, "Oh, there's too many requirements." But now, if you look at the cost of compliance now, that has driven some of the offshore centre to actually close shop. Some of them have dropped their growth over the last 4 or 5 years because nowadays they are backpedaling to come up with regulation that Labuan has in that sense. So even though we were not that attractive then, but now I think we represent a very attractive place for you to have a real solid genuine business entity or business venture, having a Labuan vehicle as your to facilitate your structure. Back in the old days, a lot of the activities were confined to the island of Labuan itself. They will not talk about outside. But I think as the world change, I think there is also a need to look at the bigger picture, whereby people are looking for other things as well. We call it the quality of life issue. People want to have the best of everything in that sense. No, not just the financial structure that you can do, but also the environment that they can spend the money. See? They want to have a lot more entertainment places. They want to have, all the branded goods and products and everything. They want the best medical services. So because of that, I think the authority look at it, and then we allowed some to a certain extent some level of activities outside of Labuan. Initially, we started with the marketing office for all Labuan company in KL or JB. I think it's going to be changed. They're going to issue a new guideline on that soon. Which basically allow you to have an office in KL and JB and to meet up client, but not to conduct the transaction. Then we have expanded it into a co-location office, which is basically an operational office. Perhaps let's say you leave 30% in Labuan and 70% in KL for Labuan Banks and Insurance Company. And we have also a co-located office for Labuan company who elected to be ITA. They could so because there are companies that are set up to take advantage of the DTA, and there's a special breed of company called Labuan International Commodity Trading Company, where they were given this very generous approval that they can operate anywhere in Malaysia, provided they are dealing in oil and gas and certain specified industry. Okay, we talk about Labuan. Why Labuan is attractive? So the tax regime in Labuan is 3% of your audited audited profit, or 30,000 upon election, which you can elect annually. Meaning to say, your tax exposure will be 20,000 ringgit annually. Because if your 3% is higher than 30,000, you pay 20,000. If you then you pay the minimum of 20,000. That's why sometimes when I tell people that the Labuan banking industry as a whole make the profit that they report is more than $500 million annually. So if you convert that into ringgit, it's probably about 1.5 billion, something like that. And for that 1.5 billion of profit that they made through Labuan, they only pay about 1.2 million ringgit. Because I think everybody opt to pay 20,000. We have at that time was 60 banks, so 60 times. So sorry. So you have 3% of audited net profit, or 30,000. If you are involved in non-trading activity, there's no tax. There's no withholding tax. There's no withholding tax in Labuan, and there's no stamp duty in Labuan. There are also personal tax exemption for service providers and foreign managers and directors in Labuan itself. So what you say, Labuan business activity is defined as any trading or non-trading activity carried in, from, or through Labuan in foreign currency by a Labuan entity with non-resident or with another Labuan entity. Though the general rule is that you can only deal with the people, but sometimes you say, what happen if I deal with Malaysian? I think the main issue is that you can deal with Malaysian. The other thing is, the only thing is that whether or not you can enjoy the benefit under the Labuan tax activity. Because if you're outside the Labuan business activity tax definition of Labuan business activity, then you're subject to the income tax act. So that is the only thing. It doesn't mean that you can't touch them at all. You can probably deal the transaction as such, just that whether or not you be subject to the same tax regime or not, or you can enjoy the benefit or not. So this is very straightforward. Any active activity that you do is considered trading activity, where the passive one is non-trading. So even though the general rule said you cannot deal with resident, there are circumstances that was provided in the Labuan Business Activity Tax Act for you to deal with resident. For example, if you are a licensed bank or licensed entity carrying banking, insurance, and financial services under the Act, you can deal with Malaysian. If you are a Labuan entity holding investment, you can. You can carry out activity like employing administrative professional contact like legal counsel, accountant, management company, investment advisor, and to a certain extent, if with the Minister of Finance approval, you can also have a debt aggregation and with a domestic company, and also carry out transaction in Malaysian currency or with ringgit and with resident. That one is subject to the ministerial approval. So basically, even though generally you can't deal with it, not to say you can't, but you can't enjoy the Labuan tax benefit if you deal with them. But there are certain circumstances where you can actually deal with Malaysian and also in ringgit as well. So we talk about the special exemptions so you need income received from Labuan entity exempted from income tax. There's no withholding tax, the stamp duty. I think this one you can actually read it later, so I wouldn't waste your time just to go through it one by one. I'm sure you are pretty much aware of this exemption already. Okay, now we talk about the rise of offshore. I was talking about the challenges that was faced by offshore center, business finance center, whereby it came from the loosely regulated center. Now it has to become something similar to a domestic regulated activity. So there is a need for a hybrid between those two. So Labuan in itself, we call ourselves a mid-shore financial center, because from we started, we already have the regulation that is more than some offshore center, but not as much as the domestic side. So we're in between. So we have the compliance with international requirement, but at the same time, we are quite flexible in allowing business activity as such. So basically, it is because the need to be more transparent, to be able to report to the relevant authority, that brings about the concept of mid-shore jurisdiction. It's not something really new. I think it was, if you look at the literature, read through the history, you'll find that there is a mention of either mid-shore or something similar to it. But it is lately that has picked up a lot of momentum, that even our tagline, where we aim to be the leading mid-shore jurisdiction connecting Asia's economy. So that is also our aspiration for the future. So why we are in a poised to take that role? Because we have a very established common law system. We have a transparent set of laws which is complying with international standard. We have a very responsive regulator. I'm sure the Labuan IBFC people would like to when you say that, they are very responsive. We have a simple, competitive, business-friendly tax system, nice legal framework, and I think we also provide you the confidentiality or the protection that is required. Because the truth of the matter, there's no more absolute secrecy anywhere in the world anymore. Like last time, even the Swiss have to change. You know, even the place, the centers in Europe, they have to change because they can't afford to be outside the mainstream expectation. So now, the only thing that we can promise in Labuan is, so long as you are not involved in any criminal activity or not in anything, your information will be protected. Some people say that, well, can anybody just do a check of my company in Labuan like the domestic system? No, they can't, because there are only two ways for you to do a search for a company in Labuan. First one, you get the consent from the company. Normally, if you are about to enter into a business agreement, you will give the consent. People, can I check your company? So you give a consent. So that person with the letter of consent can get the information from Labuan FC. But if you want to do it discreetly, you have to present proof that you have a good cause to get the information. Meaning to say, I'm about to enter into the agreement. So you have to show the authority, the registrar company, the approve. Or you say you have a dispute with this company, you're suing them in court. So you have to also provide the proof. If the registrar is satisfied of the evidence provided, then you are allowed to conduct a search. So that's the only two conditions, situation whereby you can do that. So in a way, it's this somewhat what I was trying to say, that we have a balanced approach between confidentiality and complying with international standard. We have a very good rating on the anti-money laundering, the AMLAC-FA, anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. And I think we also have came up quite positively in the reviews that been done since then. In fact, this year Labuan is undergoing I would say a routine assessment, by peer assessment by members by the APG, which is Asia Pacific Group on Money Laundering. Even though we are quite confident that we will come up strongly as well as we had done in the past. So finally, I'm sure you are relieved that I'm finally going to stop talking. So finally, the key takeaway that I would like to present is that embellished in these three design, that Labuan is a cost-efficient platform. We have a one-stop financial solution, and we are globally connected. I'm really glad that I get to do the introduction part, because that's the easiest part, because all the other part are the heavy part that they have to carry. So I'm glad that my part is done. But if you have any question that you want to ask regarding my presentation, or if you want to correct me about the things that I have presented, please do so. I stand corrected, because no, sometimes you might overlook certain things as well. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you so much.